Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. And thank you so much for being here with me, especially for another one of our walk and talk type videos. Again, as I've always said in the past, I really enjoy these because I get to have a little bit of exercise, but also as well too, I get to talk with you guys and share my knowledge and wisdom. In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about my first investment, the good, the bad, all that stuff to go with it, right? Whether you know it or not, in life, there's a lot of investments that you're making, and some of them pan out and some of them don't. And to be quite honest with you, it's up to you to really assess what that investment looks like and to make sure that you're making the right investment. Sometimes we have people that we can consult with, and it makes the decision process a lot easier. And most of the times you're sort of figuring it out. And I'll tell you what, if the investment goes sideways, then that is what you would call the tuition of life. You got to pay for those bad investments. And like I said, in today's video, we'll talk about my first ever investment, and we'll talk about some of the good and also as well some of the bad, because I want you guys to be successful. So before we go into my first investment and what that entails, go ahead and give me a like for the video as it helps the channel grow. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. And for my folks who keep returning, I see you guys in the analytics. You're not subscribing. A bunch of people always come back here, watch my videos, and they don't subscribe. Come on, guys. Hit that button. Go ahead, subscribe, especially if you're going to watch me over and over again. Anyways, I really appreciate you guys. And lastly, of course, share this with a family member or a friend, especially since, you guys can learn from my situations. And the really interesting thing is that what we're going to talk about today as far as my first investment, it applies to anybody. It applies to whether you're starting out as a 17-year-old like I was, or if you're in your 60s and you're looking to do what I did for my first investment. So you may be wondering at this point, well, what is this investment that I keep talking about? And especially since I was 17 years old when I made the investment, and that is going to college. Yes, yes, yes. Whether you know it or not, school is an investment. A lot of people don't realize that school is meant to give you some knowledge that you could apply into the world, and hopefully you recoup the investment that you made by having an income out of it. Now, a very small population, they can have the ability to go back to school and learn just for the sake of learning. That's very, very few. Majority of people, they're looking to go to school because they're hoping to get a career out of what they're looking to study. And again, I made that decision back when I was 17 to go to school to do engineering. And I would say that the investment turned out to be very, very well, but there was a lot of hard lessons that came with it. So there was a lot of good and a lot of bad that came out of that investment, mostly good stuff, but I'll share with you guys all the good and the bad, so that way it'll help you in your journey, and then you can decide how to make that investment going forward. So without further ado, let's go into the bad side of the investment. And there's a lot of things that can make this video over an hour long, and I'm not looking to make it that long. So what we're gonna do is just talk about 3 things that made that investment not so good. So first up on the list is college choice. And guys, I don't know if you know this or not, but where you go to school absolutely matters. And it matters in so many different factors. And the first one that I'll talk to you about is, especially from an engineering perspective, there's something called ABET accreditation, or ABET. And now that I think about it, in order to help you out, I think I'll put a link in the description so that way you can see that. But basically, it's an accreditation that schools receive for their engineering programs to make sure that you have a standardized program, so when graduates come out of college, they actually know what they're doing. And I can tell you right now, the school that I chose didn't really have that. And at the time when I was going to school, I didn't really have anyone guiding me and teaching me these things. So as you can imagine, essentially by you graduating from that school with that engineering degree, most companies, they look at that engineering degree kind of funky because they're like, we don't really know if he knows what he needs to know because there's no accreditation. Now, part of that too, also, there's a racket behind it because you have to pay for the accreditation. It's sort of like getting your IP rating on these cell phones as an example. Some phones are engineered really, really well, and they just didn't have the money in order to pay for that IP rating, but they certainly can withstand water. And some of them, you know, you can tell that you really, really need that accreditation because, you know, it keeps things in check. And so however you look at it, and especially from a schooling perspective, it is nice to be able to have that accreditation, because then it tells your potential employer that, hey, they went to a good school, they understand the curriculum, and they'll be able to pick up the ropes here on the job, and they can continue working. So I would say that that was one of the things that I made a mistake when I did that initial investment at 17 years old, which is picking that school because it didn't have the proper accreditation for the field that I was going into. Now, second on the list here, and moving along quickly, is not only was it college choice, but because I chose that particular college, and by the way, I'm not looking to bash this college, so we'll keep the name out of it. But the second thing on the list here is because I chose that college, it also drove how much I paid. What do you mean by that? Well, that college was located in Rhode Island, and by the way, because there's so many schools in Rhode Island, I won't tell you exactly which one it was, but I went to a school in Rhode Island, and I grew up in New York. So what did that mean? That meant that I would have to pay out-of-state tuition. So if you don't know, if you go to college, there's two types of tuition, actually three types: in-state tuition, out-of-state tuition, and international student tuition. Now back to number two, which ties into number one, because I chose this school that is out of state, I had to go and pay, of course, out-of-state tuition. And by the way, out-of-state tuition is one of the most costly tuitions that you could pay. I've seen sometimes where there's schools that have doubled or tripled the out-of-state tuition compared to the in-state tuition. Now, because I chose a school that was out of state, of course, that means that I had to go ahead and pay out-of-state tuition. Now, here is an example of what I've seen. And this doesn't apply to me because this is not the exact numbers, but just to give you an example here. An in-state student can pay $5,000 to go to a school, but me, because I chose that school and I live in another state, now I have to pay out-of-state tuition, and that same tuition is $15,000 instead of $5,000 like the in-state student. Why is that? All because you don't live in the state. Isn't that interesting? And I didn't know that at the time when I was making that investment as a 17-year-old, that I was paying extremely higher than the person that lives in that particular state. So that was a reason why I was racking up debt much faster than any student that was coming from in-state or the state of Rhode Island, because I had chose to go to this school that was in the state of Rhode Island, even though I grew up in the state of New York. So the second item that didn't make the investment all that effective, because I don't want to say it was bad entirely, it just could have been a little bit more effective in how I made that investment. But the second thing was, of course, paying out-of-state tuition, because I chose an out-of-state school, which ties back to number one. Now the third item that I'll talk about here, and of course we're gonna make this nice and short because there's a lot more to this game, and again, I know all about colleges. But the third item that I'll talk about here that didn't make my investment all that effective is taking the money that I was getting in refunds and putting in my mind that that was free money for me to spend. So folks, I don't know if you realize this or not, a lot of people, they'll take out a lot more in student loans than they actually need. And at the time when I was making this decision, I didn't really know what I would need, because I didn't really have the financial literacy to kind of calculate all that stuff. And then more importantly too, because I was out in Rhode Island on my own, I didn't necessarily know what I would need. And so I would take on more student loans and have a buffer in there in order to get these refunds, either after one semester or after the second semester. Now, every time I got a refund, it was extra money that hit my account, and boy oh boy was I happy when that happened, because I thought that it was free money. So of course I went to town. I started going and having a good time as far as parties. If you actually watch a video of how we did our debt-free scream in our 20s, my wife will also tell you too that I used it to buy motorcycles, which is not wrong either. But of course, she threw me under the bus on national TV. Actually, no, I wouldn't call it national TV, but I will be forever on the internet with this thing over my head saying that I was using student loans for motorcycles, which is actually kind of true, by the way. But stupid decisions aside, because again, that was stupid decisions and you learned from it, that was one of the biggest problems that I had, was taking this money that I thought was free and I would go ahead and do really dumb things with it. And it really made that investment really inefficient. I can't imagine how many years I would have knocked off in paying back those student loans if I hadn't taken those initial student loans and bought things that weren't really necessary. All right, guys, so those were 3 things that I did wrong with that investment. But now I want to turn it around and talk about 3 positive things that I did with that investment. Because just like anything in life, there's always positives and negatives. And you're hoping that there are more positives than there are negatives. And in my particular case now, it definitely was positive. Even though I went through all the tough times and all the trials that went with it, it was most certainly positive. And if I had to do it over again, I would, but I would do it a little bit more effectively. So let's jump into positive number 1. And positive number 1 of the investment was picking the right degree. Now guys, I can't tell you how important it is to pick the right degree. A lot of people go to college and they pick the wrong degree. Now I chose a degree in engineering, and engineers, they're in such high demand. And the thing is that most people don't study engineering, and that is a reason why they are in high demand, because nobody does it. There were so many times I was in classes where a lot of it was international students, or sometimes you'll have certain ethnic groups that put their kids in those engineering programs. And I was literally the only Hispanic in every single class. So what that taught me is that our particular ethnic group, they don't really value things that are very important to society. A lot of times you'll see them go into these programs that they don't really have much return on them. And I'm not here to bash any single college degree. That's not what this video is about. But we can make a separate video on that if you're interested. Let me know in the comments below. But what I'm referring to is if you're looking to get a return on investment, which is pretty much majority of everyone, you have to pick the right degree. And an engineering degree allowed me to really take off from a financial perspective. So number 1, picking the right degree. Now, the second thing that I did right with this investment was I grew up and matured much faster than most males do. And it's interesting because most males don't start getting their lives together until they are in their 30s. And even some of the guys that I even coach, I've seen them go into their mid-30s and they still don't have it together. And everybody's different, of course. And by the way, if you guys are interested in coaching sessions, link is in the description, and as well, I'll pin it to the top of the comments. As I mentioned, this investment allowed me to do was mature in areas that I needed to mature in because I was very immature. And I was to the point where I was gonna flunk out of school. I started to realize how much money that I was investing into school. And so when you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans and you have no way to pay it back, you start to realize how heavy a decision that is, and you have to start turning your life around. And so one of the choices that I made early on in life, and especially has to do with this investment, is I decided to get serious about my career. I decided to get serious about the investment I was making in myself, and I started taking my classes a lot more seriously. And so I would start studying a lot more than I partied, which then translated into my work ethic. And then that translated into me being successful, not just from a schooling perspective, but also as well, after I left school, all those lessons learned is what I applied into the workforce. And that taught me to be more disciplined and more diligent in the work environment to help me get ahead in life. So number 2 would definitely have to be the great things that I did about the investment is growing up and becoming disciplined and applying that to other aspects and areas of life, which turned out to be a phenomenal investment. Now, the third and final item that I'll talk about that I did right with this investment, and it's kind of funny because you'll probably never realize this, and I'm gonna throw you a curveball here, but I would say the third and best thing that came out of that investment is my wife. Now you're probably thinking to yourself and saying, gee, how does your wife tie into this? Like, that doesn't even make sense. What does that even mean? I met my wife in college, and had I not gone to that school, and had I not been there at that place and time, I would have never met her. And one of the things that I can tell you guys is, especially somebody who's a little further on in life, especially in my, 30s where I'm at right now. And by the way, folks who are much further ahead in the journey, you can comment and let me know if what I'm saying is true or not. And for my younger folks, listen up here. One of the biggest investments you'll ever make is the person who you lay next to at night. The person you decide to marry or the person you decide to be with, they are the biggest investment. Why is that? Because they can add value into your life tremendously, like my wife does, or they can slow you down and even drag you along for many, many years. Now, going to that school, meeting my wife, and then ultimately we decided to get married, she has been with me from the start. So you guys are seeing me today with all the financial success and everything that goes with it. But 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. 10 years ago, I was not as smart. 10 years ago, I didn't know anything about money. And still somehow she believed that I would go far in life, whatever that looked like. And so she decided to go ahead and get married with me, and the rest is history. But I bring that up is because when we started, we had absolutely nothing. In fact, actually, we were so deeply in debt, but she was still with me the entire time. And we worked together in order to get out of debt. And also as well, we worked together to build this really big portfolio that we have now. Now, I share that with you because she helped me along the way. I can't sit here and say that I did it all by myself. And that goes back to, she was one of the best investments that essentially came out of this investment called college. Had I not met her, I don't know that I would have found somebody who was willing to accept me with all the troubles that I had back then and still decide to say, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and build with you. Not a lot of people are willing to do that. And it's interesting because the older that I get now, the more that I start to realize is that as a male who is successful, if you try to go ahead and find somebody now, and let's say I wasn't married, all they care about is, hey, how much you make a year? What does your bank account look like? It's kind of funny. It's almost like a job interview. Like, people don't, they don't care about who you are, or at least most people don't, should I say. And then you start to wonder, well, does this person like me for who I am, or are they just interested because I am doing very well financially? So there's a whole nother topic that I can get into with that, guys, but for now, we'll leave it there so that way this video doesn't become an hour long. Anyways, guys, that is the top 3 things on both sides, the good and the bad, of my first ever investment. And again, my first investment ever was investing in college, or investing in myself. Now, hopefully you guys liked this video. Hopefully you learned something. And if you did, guys, go ahead and give me a like for the video, as it helps the channel grow. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so that way you're notified whenever I upload new videos to the channel. And of course, go ahead and share this with a family member or a friend. You never know. Maybe they're looking to evaluate what their next investment is. Also as well, if you want to come talk to me, again, links will be in the description and it will be pinned to the top of the comments. And one last thing, YouTube thinks that you'll like this video showing up on screen right now. So if you don't want to wait until my next video, you can go ahead and check that one out. Anyways, guys, I love you, I appreciate you, and I'll see you all in the next one.